Audience. Yeah. Hey, Ron. So our main thing, I mean, we don't really have like a crazy pre-prepared presentation thing going. We just kind of wanted to kind of just talk about what our kind of trip has been with trying to sort of almost drastically switch to trying to do aggressive CI and going towards continuous deployment and our uphill battle with tests and all that stuff. So we kind of found ourselves in a bit of a testing mess when we realized that our test suite runs for like 6 hours. I mean, like it takes us 6 hours to realize, oh, like wait a minute, like shit, our shit's broken. But, like,
so what would happen is fix a bug and then check it out tomorrow.
Yeah, like it got to the point where like you get 2 CI runs a day. So
is that browser testing? It runs automated?
Yeah, mostly Cucumber.
It was a Cucumber heavy, like almost 0 RSpec.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it was just a mess, and again, it just kind of kept growing, and it literally got to the point where like it was like 5 hours, 6 hours to a run, and it's like this is really this is almost counterproductive. So we went on an aggressive spree to A, optimize it, and B, figure out how to at least spread it out a bit. So that is one of the things we can talk about. The other thing is we've been doing a very sort of aggressive, like in the past, let's say, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months ago, 3 maybe, we've been doing an aggressive like branch everything approach to features.
3 months.
Yeah. And while that's great, while that's great for keeping things stable, it really sucks for actually getting stuff out. Because
we kind of realized it when we were handling the new UI stuff for Payroll Hero. And I ended up working on one branch for like 2-3 weeks.
And then
it was a nightmare merge.
Keep syncing back to the main, and stuff changes. And
how many independent fronts of development do you have going?
At most, around 4, probably. At our worst.
It's mostly trees. I mean, mostly have 3 pairs.
So.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
On some weeks, we might have a dev and a design effort at the same time.
Yeah.
That would make 4. But mostly 3, I guess. Which is kind of a new thing for us too.
Have you tried to parallelize your test suite or anything like that?
That's part of what we ended up doing. So, I mean, we've been using TeamCity for, well, lack of a better choice at the time. It does its job. It's probably has better.
What is TeamCity?
TeamCity is a CI server.
Oh, okay.
Kind of,
A less cool version of.
Yeah, a less cool version of like Jenkins and stuff.
Jenkins is not that cool.
Well,
is there anything cooler?
TeamCity.
I don't know.
TeamCity is less cool because it's commercial and has limits. So.
Oh, okay.
At least Jenkins is.
Anybody here tried out Travis?
What do you guys use?
We used Jenkins on one project. It took us forever to get it working because there were so many moving parts in the project, and then it broke one day, and we just started turning things off in Jenkins. Like, okay, Jenkins won't test that anymore. Jenkins won't test that anymore, and then pretty soon Jenkins is useless. Why do you spend all that time getting Jenkins working? Yeah, of course.
So
Jenkins was useful with RSpec.
What's that?
Jenkins was useful with RSpec.
Better with, yeah, it did RSpec better than Cucumber.
you had a hard time with Cucumber?
On Jenkins?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the stuff that we were running, yeah.
This TeamCity does have the added bonus of being made by the RubyMine guys, so they sort of add some Ruby support to it, sort of properly. But it kind of sucks that we're trying to do parallel builds of stuff. Well, in the end, we ended up splitting our. So the nice thing it does, it gives you a really good breakdown of like what portion of the test took a long time. So we were able to sort of look at it and sort of figure out sort of what logical chunks we could split it up to.
That's good because you can't begin to like sit down and watch an entire 6-hour test.
So we ended up, I mean, like our units and basically our specs take about 20 minutes. That's including integrations. And then our cucumbers probably took about 4 hours. So we sort of took a two-pronged effort. First effort was to just kind of go through all the tests and figure out A, do we still need them, and B, can we trim some fat in there? We ended up actually combining a lot of cucumber scenarios into like long-running scenarios. So instead of like, okay, let's figure out how to add a user. Okay, blank database, blank account. Okay, add a user. Great. Now let's figure out how to edit a user. Ooh, well, let's see, blank account, blank database.
So we just started chaining tests together.
So you add a user, edit a user, whatever, delete a user.
It's a bit to debug, but it's a bit.
Is there some way that, so aside from like editing all your tests and making like a giant test, which is kind of what you did, I guess.
Part of it, yeah.
Or like making a master scenario and testing that goes through a lot of the cases, right?
Yeah.
In one thing. Is there any way that we could make Cucumber call other scenarios and then somehow analyze the dependency and find like the master one and then back up?
I wish it was that smart.
Write your specs in our spec.
Right.
And then we just realized that it was not a very, it was an unsustainable way to test. So the second part of, well, like the middle part of that, before Peter's part was to look into alternative, well, by alternative, I mean not Cucumber ways of testing code by using like Jasmine and controller specs and view specs. So yeah.
So before then we had like zero view specs. Like zero.
Literally
We
zero.
had like one controller.
One
spec.
controller.
A small number of unit tests. Zero helper tests. No, we had one.
We had one helper test. Yeah.
And our Jasmine took a grand total of 2 seconds to run.
No, it's like milliseconds or something.
Now it takes 2.5.
Yeah.
It's not much better off.
Behavior-driven JavaScript.
We realized that we're putting too much stuff into Cucumber. The behavior might be great to test at an ideal path, but if you're gonna like throw a whole bunch of different cases at it,
Especially it becomes slower when you are running with Selenium or JavaScript.
Oh yeah.
So we mostly try to when we are thinking of optimizing a Cucumber scenario, mostly try to move it towards WebKit or
We
just try to avoid the JavaScript part of it. Test it with Jasmine or something. Yeah.
But then even so I think we started off at maybe 6 hours, 5.5 or so. After our aggressive optimization, I think we gave it like 2 or 3 days of just solid dev effort. We gave it maybe 2 or 3 days of solid dev effort, like all 3 pairs. Just like going through tests and making them suck less. We shaved off a couple of hours of it, but that wasn't nearly enough. Like 3 hours is still 3 hours.
Yeah.
So the last part was we re-examined it. So Cucumber was still taking the biggest chunk. So just and we ended up just configuring Team City to run Cucumber in chunks. So just set up different test scenarios for like each. You just divide it up into subfolders essentially of like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes each.
How fast do you think it needs to run to be able to do continuous deployment?
Faster than it is right now, and we're just past an hour at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just by doing it in parallel.
Yeah, I think the ideal is half an hour or less.
Yeah, ideal is around 20-25.
Yeah, I was on a large project a couple of years ago. We had about 5 pairs working, and when the test suite hit about 45 minutes, what we noticed is that nobody would run the full suite until the end of the day.
It's too long, right? You can't wait.
It's too long. You can't do it. Yeah. And, we were able to pair up. They hooked up something and made spec jour or I don't know what. They wrote something so that we could use Bonjour and the test would run on everybody's workstation somehow.
So like distributed testing.
It's all distributed. But but it still took 15 or 20 minutes, and that was when everything was working perfectly. 'Cause, you know, then sometimes that system would fail, and you'd be back for 45 minutes.
So right now we're throwing 3 servers at it at about having 70 minutes at the current time.
Right.
So we still have a lot of room to like just replace cucumbers with other tests. Then we go from like minutes per test to seconds per test.
So we had this thing called parallels before, right? We used it and we stopped.
I was investigating Hydra and Parallel.
Yeah.
I tried Hydra, but it's doing some crazy stuff that
What's Hydra?
Hydra.
Yeah.
It's like the monster with multiple heads.
It's like Parallel, but it does it dynamically. It like breaks down your test
And it
then-
breaks it up across multiple computers too.
No, yeah, it can do that, but I think it does it on the fly. Like it determines which
It's
how
something
to.
very similar to
Parallel.
Yeah, but it.
But no, but Parallel's kind of dumb because it pre-splits them.
Yeah, it creates some measurements of the test and then does some splitting at first. It stores the measurements in a file and then it computes. For your next run, it will be better than your.
That's pretty fancy. Does it? Is there like as much headaches as there is with Parallel trying to actually get your test to actually run in the
Yeah, I
Parallel
mean,
setup?
yeah, we're having headaches. That's why we resorted back to doing everything sequentially. I mean, it's probably because of the way our tests are written. There's some, monkey patching that goes on that affects the other tests.
Oh, monkey patching?
Yeah, that happens.
Who would ever do that?
I think the biggest issue is like the database, right?
Although we have like for each, like if we're gonna do 4 parallels, we have 4 instances of the test
One of the worst
database.
things about parallelizing the tests.
Yeah.
You need multiple databases.
And sometimes you forget to migrate on all of the.
Or the
For
DBs that we
databases
between
and then,
tests, like every time we
With the experiments I've done with Parallel, at least, I haven't really played with Hydra much. Parallel kind of works. The only thing is it does have weird issues. It might have gotten better by now, because mainly Selenium and WebKit just did not get along with multiple things spawning them. So, plus it needs to launch like 4 separate web server processes that host the app for web server for WebKit and Selenium to actually poke at.
Like you really need a lot of hardware to provide it.
I also
But
think the
if
finding
that's,
was
if that's able to half or a third the time it takes to run just on a single instance, that might be okay.
Did you build a special server like for this, or?
Not really. I mean, we just have a pretty vanilla Ubuntu EC2 instance running a TeamCity agent.
So I'm thinking of buying a machine specifically to run some of this stuff in our office. Maybe putting a SSD in it, see if it can go faster.
Well, I/O is going to be a bottleneck,
Yeah.
but even with an SSD, you're not going to do a huge dent in it.
Yeah.
Like the tests on my notebook aren't that much faster.
I also tried, the file system, like turning off no A time and all of those stuff. It did shave off like 2-3 seconds.
That's a win. That adds up.
Is that 2-3 seconds for the entire run?
Turning
Yeah,
off
for
what?
like
Wasn't
like
that just
turning off
variance or
journaling, all of those file system things.
I think for us the biggest bottleneck is still the database, right? Because between like you have your fixtures and they get loaded in the DB, and when your test finishes, you pretty much roll back all the transactions, and with the next test you restart with the same set of fixtures. So
That's another discipline we kinda
Yeah.
did. Like if you can do it without hitting the database, great.
yeah,
If you can't, do it in a transactional way. I mean, you have to code around it a bit, but
Pretty much stub anything you're not testing.
yes, exactly. like 100 lines of stub and like 4 lines of test.
Since it's a test database, could you run the database in RAM? Entirely? I mean, who cares if if your
It's been
machine
going
goes
around
off,
for a
you
while.
just
I
restart
tried
the test?
that.
You would be surprised. I actually did try that.
Yeah, I tried
I'm
that
not
also.
surprised. I mean, 6 hours sweet, you're gonna try that.
Well, we actually had that set up originally for our
Sounds
dev
easy.
setup.
Just might work.
One of our like dev boot up helper script thingies has a configuration for booting up a MySQL entirely in the RAM disk. That helps. It doesn't help that much.
Okay.
Like maybe 10%.
I agree.
It's a tremendous amount of time just like booting up a cucumber stack. Yeah, there's really no getting around that.
Yeah.
Actually, we tried. I tried looking at it also. I mean, it's not the database actually that's slowing things down. What I looked at is slowing down in all of those get, on the get part and on those post part. So I checked. It's actually running all of the filters. So I'm checking if I check all of the filters if we're using all of them. Maybe some controllers don't need this much filters at all. So I mean, there's some optimizations in the application layer also.
Something you can do.
Well, that's actually kind of another thing we've sort of been doing wrong. A bunch of our cucumbers do quote-unquote setup by clicking stuff.
Yeah.
Now go into this UI section and set up a bunch of things. Go to this entirely different UI section and actually test the feature.
So
It's like testing a user, then building the user on a step stack just so you can have access to it.
So, what if there was a way to, this doesn't exist, but maybe we could hack it up, that you could specify rollback points and branching points in your test. So you could say, okay, these are the 3 cases that I'm going to test from this point on. So I want to set a rollback point in a transaction and roll back the database each time I want to read on. So I don't have to redo the setup for that case. I just roll back and then proceed with the other test case. Roll back, proceed with the next test case. Some kind of like metadata on top of Cucumber saying like this is the structure of my test suite. These are the scenarios and their dependency relationships.
There's a few technical huge limitations to that. Cucumber runs in a separate process. I mean, the web servers run in a separate process from the actual test runner, so you don't even access the transactions.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm saying that, but that's with some extra stuff maybe that could be gotten around.
Yeah, but it's a good
Write
base
a custom
idea.
database, right?
What's that?
Write a custom database agent.
Something's gonna. Okay. You'd have to tell the Rails database to do its rollback. You have to tell Rails like I want to roll back to this point somehow. Or
You need to write. You need to have your rack server actually run within the same process as the same thread as the actual test runner. Which
there you go. I mean, it throws out a lot of the integration stuff, and of course, if you build up state in the browser and you're running actual browser tests, that's not reflective of maybe the real scenario. But.
Well, wherever you can get away with it, you can do transactional cucumbers on using rack test. But the moment you use WebKit or Selenium, it has to have an external browser hook at the app, so it needs to run up a port, it needs to run a server, all that stuff. Rack test runs fully in process, so it's just a simulated request within the test itself.
I guess
So you can do transactions cucumber if you do not do JavaScript.
That's right.
we're still at that point where the biggest gain is to use less cucumber.
Yeah.
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 Well, yeah, it's like 20 minutes of all the unit tests,
Yeah.
like all the
Beer.
R specs,
Beer.
and then
Plus
hours
on
with
the
the
platter.
cucumber. So
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah,
potential.
testing, we have a lot of like integrations tests as well, like using the aspect. All the stuff that we
It's the way we
Brian.
set things up right now.
Hindi,
we just have,
nakakatapos yung
we
nag-video.
just have a whole bunch of different little pieces of the tests run separately, and then the CI server just schedules them whenever there's a server available.
Yeah.
So-
We also did that, but not enough apparently.
It sort of optimistically schedules them then. Whenever one finishes, it moves to the next one.
I guess there's gonna be a point where throwing more servers at it is gonna stop like giving us gains.
We can still throw servers at it. Our main limitation is that Team City now asks us to pay money. So they cap you off at 3 agent servers, and then after that they want you to pay like I don't know, like $50 a server a month or something. So that's an option, but it's something that has to be evaluated carefully. What I'd love is for Team City to be able to understand that all these different running pieces are actually parts of a whole. So also like have like a meta status to it or something. Because right now it's a bit of a pain because you don't really know. Like, all these tests, like there's so many different tests that like so many different test segments that run. It's hard to know like when was your last like fully good build.
To clarify the problem, like something like this, like tests may keep getting queued up. One might finish before the other ones, so you don't really get to know like which build test and which one like.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
It also optimistically stacks them. So if like say it has like chunk 3, which has a button which hasn't run yet, but now there's a new commit. It's not gonna re-queue chunk 3. It's just gonna. It's still in the queue, so it's gonna get all the new changes. So not all the tests run on all the revisions, just because it hasn't run them yet. So that's just gonna pick up all the changes. So if you do a bunch of commits, minutes apart. But yeah, right now 70 minutes still feels like a lot. It's a lot better than 5.
5 hours.
5 hours.
Hours.
So
This year, how about you? Like any other team? I mean, like testing.
horror stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Peter, how long does it take to test Friendster?
Ours takes like so we have this thing called CI fast.
Yeah.
It's actually the slowest one. But it was meant to be fast initially. But now
We
that one
started
runs
it
in
and we
like
just
what,
deprecated it.
an hour something, like an hour, about an hour. But it's still too slow because we have like typically like about 6 pairs. So there's just too many commits. So by the time you commit, till the time you know if it's broken, it's usually if you commit in the morning, by like mid-afternoon, you realize that you've broken something. So it's already too slow.
Like how big is your test suite?
How many tests do we have? Like 6,000?
Yeah.
I don't know.
6,000.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So it's
Holy shit.
We tried doing
Now-
some hacks.
Now,
like-
how do you count your tests when you're dealing with cucumbers? Use
So this-
various?
Yeah.
we use Aspec only, we don't use Cucumber.
You don't use cucumbers,
It's
it's all
Aspec,
ours.
Aspec and Jasmine.
And ours were
We
the
use
R specs.
Capybara for
There's a lot of
That's a lot of R specs.
Selenium for. Although Selenium, we don't really have.
Selenium there's not so many actually.
Yeah, not so many
I think,
Selenium.
like, we
It's
don't-
really, really slow. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we just put the important stuff there.
Like, do you guys do integration testing with the specs or like
With Capybara we do
just do like standalone unit tests for the controllers and views?
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have that.
Engineers are doing
Most Selenium is doing mostly the integration. Right? Yeah, but we don't have so many of those. But yeah, generally it's Aspec is it's hard to can't find a way yet to make it efficient. And it's so the consequences that you
tests are faster than the tests.
yeah.
It's probably because the upgrade in the Selenium driver, it now uses the WebKit, because before it just uses Firefox, usually uses 2 cores. WebKit uses 4 cores, so it's faster. So
Yeah, we try those weird things. Like we try to assign build process. Like on Jenkins, you have like we said like we can have up to 4 builds running. So we try to tie one build to one core, but that never really works somehow. It's still it's the same core that does all the work, and the other two that just sleep. That was kind of fun.
Other hacks we did is we since the like for memcache, so we found out that cache gets reset every test. So I created a hack so it gets reset only at the beginning of the describe of the whole stuff. Well, I mean you can because there are some tests that really expect it to be empty. So we did it on a case by case basis.
Called it explicitly whenever
Yeah,
you want to clear the
we
cache.
just wanted to be reset every
Nice.
test. For by default it will just be reset at the start of the suite. So it improved it a lot by around like 8 seconds per test.
Just by doing memcache only.
Yeah, just doing memcache.
We don't do a lot of caching yet though.
We don't do that much caching. We don't do big track speed.
I think so. Yeah. Speed? We need speed.
Apparently we do.
Make them wait.
I heard that. Apparently we do.
And another is disable the
Just
logging.
this afternoon. Disable logging.
Yeah, disable logging for test.
Yeah, for logging we log like this week we actually cleaned up the Jenkins machine. We had 40 gigs of logs or something, just a crazy number.
there's crazy amounts of logging. I mean, no one really looks at it.
Yeah, and then the disk got full and then we're like, oh, where is that? Oh, it's the logs. So we went to like warning and then suddenly it became like that. So I was just writing 40 gigs of log, just the sheer amount of work.
See, like, it's just a question, like, you guys think it's a good idea if you just stop out or mock all the filters and stuff for your performance tests?
Mock the filter.
Just stop the filters.
Unless you're testing them, I guess
Yeah.
that could be reasonable.
Yeah, if you have to go to a specific like action that does a lot of filtering before, you can just change the
So
filter.
probably if you're not testing the filter itself,
I hadn't studied it, but Joseph here was saying that the filters consume a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like if your controller just doesn't need it, I mean,
Yeah.
you can just. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have to do it in your test. I mean, at your application level, it makes sense that. I mean, just for the general performance. I mean, if you don't need the filter, like skip it. Like what we did is, I mean, our application controller got so big. I just created another controller that
Application
contains only
controller
the that contains only the essential stuff like the login, and then that's the one that bare minimum controllers need. So the other stuff, like if your controller only returns JSON, you don't need
Yeah.
those layouts and all of those stuff. You can just use the minimal set of filters.
And it's a two-way gain too. Gain of something in performance and
The tests also run faster.
the test also run faster.
One trick we have sort of working for us in the background. I mean, like for every single cucumber scenario you run, you have to log into your app.
Yeah.
It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
That's a lot of extra clicks. So we have a dummy action that just accepts a lot user IDs.
It's technically a gray area though. Like there shouldn't like. Yeah.
But you have a normal test that runs through your login, then that's fine, you're done, right? And then you have if you actually do login that test just to test something else entirely,
pretty
then
much the stuff that
pass a login ID.
basically stub out the filter, stub out
It's a
login.
backdoor only accessible in the test environment.
It's if on a
Given I'm logged in as so and so.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, and there's this action that only responds if you're in.
And like even to further optimize it, like when you log in, you get taken to the dashboard, right? You pass an extra parameter to that, you get redirected to wherever you want.
Yeah.
So that can take you straight to the first page you need to go.
Yeah.
So you hit one action, logs you in, redirects you to where you want to go, as opposed to hit one action, type in stuff, hit submit, get to the
Backdoor
dashboard,
and
then go
magic
where you want to
carpet.
go.
Anywhere in the app.
Well, I just, I mean, on some scenarios, if you're not specifically testing where you get logged in, where you go after you get logged in, just say, given I'm logged in, and then I'm on, and then I'm on the under such and such a page.
But there's still a page load that you're just not testing for. It's still there.
So
You
instead
load
of
up the
that-
dashboard. You get redirected to the dashboard. Then you type that in URL in the address bar.
So what you do is like, given I'm logged in and on something.
And I go straight to the other page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that just.
it's login. You get redirected to where you want to go. So there's like literally one request.
Piggybacking on the return.
One extra
to
request that simply just redirects to where you want to go, as opposed to page load, login,
Rendering.
submit, redirect, page load. Oh, now I go where I want to go. So that can definitely shave off
Yeah.
a good number of seconds of each and every single scenario.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have one feature dedicated to testing logging in, and after that, you don't really need to care.
I guess it's a good mindset to it as well when you're mocking and stubbing stuff. It's as long as it's tested, you don't need to reproduce that same state every time. So just getting better at mocking things. The past few weeks especially. I don't think I should brag about it. But
We've used mocks. We have used mocks.
yeah.
View tests involve
Speaking of
about a
mocks.
page of mocks, then about 2 lines of tests.
Like, it should render. And then like, two page
spies.
which don't really
They
exist.
kind of suck. Aspect spies.
I respect what?
The
spice.
spies, like the should receive thing.
Oh yeah.
Similar to
It's
how
actually a stub.
yeah, it's a stub. It
It's
doesn't
not really a
it
spy.
doesn't let you,
really
it doesn't
go
let you hit
into-
the original version of the
Yeah.
method, so you can't just go like passively spy on it.
Yeah.
It's like, and that should be called, but it also should do whatever it normally does. I
It
don't want
doesn't
to
do
stop
stuff
that.
like the Jasmine's guys do. They actually like.
They kind of latch on and just check that it was called instead of replacing it entirely. Like, oh yeah, I was called, but I did nothing.
Right, right. So you can't say I should receive this and return X, Y, Z. Or that's
Stops the method. So
It's a stuff. So
it's a stop.
It's a stub, so you can fake your response,
yeah.
but you can't call the original code.
So it basically doesn't matter whether your method
Yeah. As
exists
soon
or
as you
not.
start copying and pasting like little bits of your code into your test, then you're like, something's gone wrong.
I mean, you could do the block mode on the should receive thing,
Yeah.
I have not.
and then paste your method. But yeah, you're defeating
Kind
the
of
purpose.
sucks too.
Kind of defeats the purpose of testing.
Well, yeah, like so, like I mean,
That was something we encountered.
we gave it one stab, but I
Test that it
tried
does the
actually
same
using
thing.
it.
To be sure, taste that thing there.
We're still kind of, I mean, just me. So I've been hacking at a gem to add the spying to it. But my first attempt didn't quite work out to be actually helpful.
Another,
I missed the whole fact that the whole thing was like, yeah, we need it for like should receive, but should receive is not the stub call itself. So we made it work for stub, but not for should receive. So you can now stub and call through. So you can stub, but that kind of defeats the purpose completely.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, what was that effort for again?
Does anybody,
It's one of those, weekend hacks.
Yeah.
does anybody else here do a lot of isolated view testing?
Test, anybody?
Does anybody else know what a view test is?
Does anybody know? Does anybody know you can do that?
Yeah,
I just googled it.
There's view tests in
It's
our
actually
spec.
quite limiting. Like most of the stuff that you can do, like 2 years old, and apparently you can't nest.
Well, you
complex.
can nest them, but all
After you monkey patched it, now we can.
no. The default matchers, and even like most of the gems that you try to find for help for testing your actual just even like small bits of the markup on your view. Because, you're testing your view. Like, what are you testing? You're testing that shit shows up or doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Copy bar.
The asserts for that, I mean, they're great if you're just testing for one thing, but if you want to start like, I need one thing, and
To be
inside of
inside
that I
another
need something
thing.
else, and inside of that I need something else. The problem with it is it creates this gigantic nested test that says, I need this with that and that and that and that. Nope, sorry, couldn't find it. It's like, but you found that, and you found that, and you found that. It's just a little thing that is missing.
Right.
And
Yeah, it
that's,
doesn't understand
it makes
the
it complete,
scope of
it makes a
things.
complete meaningless error message, right? So we ended up just hacking a little thing that just like actually nests, goes like, okay, I need to find this, great, found it. Now inside of it, look for that.
So in your view tests, you're basically setting up a bunch of instance variables that ought to be there?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And mocking
It's
the
also-
shit out of them. Mock
It's also-
model X, mock model Y.
It's also it's a good way to bring up smells. Like if you find yourself like
If you're
what we
mocking,
said, if you're mocking
up a mountain,
if you're
There's
mocking
like too much
200,
logic in there, you get to realize that
Yeah,
you
you
should
have
be
to-
moving
yeah.
into a helper.
yeah. Or you should have broken up your views to render more.
it's actually really interesting when you're forced to mock everything on your model. You realize what your views call,
Mm-hmm.
and you go like, wait a minute, this view shouldn't be calling that.
Right.
It's a way to refactor as well.
Speaking of the view stuff, we should also bring up mustache a little bit.
Oh,
You guys are in charge of that.
oh well, yeah.
We were just experimenting with the stuff, like,
So it's
Mustache?
like object or yeah.
and it was.
What's up?
I hear a story. I smell a story.
It smells like, what was that? The thing they renamed Ember before it was,
No, stash is by
It's like
the
logical
it's by the
templating.
underscore people.
yeah, okay.
So backbone.
Better,
Logicless.
better, okay. That's
Buddies of backbone.
So
You're
it's
okay with that?
object
okay with
oriented.
backbone.
Yeah.
It's basically logicless templates.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Oh, yeah.
so idea that we came up with was like we were working on this pop-up stuff, and so we thought of like the HTML part of it, of the pop-up, we're do it in Mustache, so that like you only render back a JSON response. It's easy to test, the controller test, super
Just
easy.
throw a JSON at it.
So JSON edit is really like
It's like the view. It's like the isolated view test
that
equivalent of
makes it
JS.
pretty easy
Yeah.
for view tests.
You don't need a few tests. You can test the whole thing in a controller test. Like, this should be a JSON thing. Okay, I can check if it has keys and
That's
stuff.
super easy. One good point about it is like you can actually use those templates for if you are like sharing stuff between apps or something, you can have pretty much like pull it out because it doesn't depend on Ruby anymore. But you throw at it as JSON. So it's independent of ERP
Given
stuff.
some JSON, my template renders thus.
Given some JSON, given some HTML, given a bunch of placeholders in the middle of the HTML, stick a bunch of stuff from the JSON into that.
No, it's kind of thing that is pretty good. Helps you avoid like
Well, it basically really forces you to avoid basically everything
They think-
in your views.
I think
Really makes them views.
what really backs up this practice is, well, this new thing we're following. I mean, everything's an experiment here.
So we're following lean.
Yeah, we're following this thing called Lean.
This thing.
This thing called Lean.
You suck at
So wait, you're doing lean programming?
We're doing lean.
Everything else.
Lean everything. Lean startup the whole way.
Yeah. So the book hasn't come out yet, but they're actually starting to come out. No, like,
But he has one in his bag.
Yeah, I
have it there.
The luxury, but that's just that's like the
The preview.
for dummies.
Peter and Nico?
Never cover.
Not that book. So
Yeah.
so like I guess that kind of leads into another practice we've been sort of doing is with the whole lean thing. Lean really likes CI and CD and the whole thing. So, but we kind of understand that CD is not. It's not something you just jump into. It's something you work towards.
progressively learn about it.
Yeah.
Having your tests run in less than half an hour is a good.
Target.
Is a milestone towards that. You can't continuously deploy if you need half a day to know that your tests are okay.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a difference between the sort of the level of financial interest in your customers in the product.
Not necessarily. Like we've heard like stories of like companies who are like what do you call it? Like whole financial certification stuff, and they do CD. They deploy like 20 times a day. It can be done on any scale.
Yeah.
Almost pretty much good. They've been doing it.
So, like, it can be done on any scale. It's all about a lot of it is about how disciplined your team is. The whole thing is the smaller your commit, and the faster your test rate. the sooner you'll know that you're breaking stuff, and then the sooner you can fix it.
What about the concept
So
of the
do you
future?
ever deploy at like 5 p.m.?
That's my favorite.
That's your favorite time?
That's when I leave. It's like Nico's not gonna commit anything.
Actually,
Deploy's done, let's go home.
9 p.m. on a Friday is my favorite time.
The 10-foot pole.
That's your favorite.
9 p.m. on a Friday.
Yes.
That was me.
Somebody was.
To deploy.
If he could, he would have committed in a taxi too. So
No, but like it's all about building in layers of checks.
yeah.
And your test suite is
Napahinto?
one. Your test suite
Parang
actually
nahinto
running
yata
fast is a
kanina.
huge one.
Hindi, kanina ko pa nakita yung web.
That's worth so much. Like right now, even with our 1 hour run, we're so much better off. Like we were able to break 90% of our tests
Depende
and
kung
fix them in
makakuha
the
ng
same day.
Yeah. Pretty much did that.
Architectural changes.
Kayo, mag-tap tayo.
Pretty much did that.
So, ito yung
Uh, just because we're able to focus
Si
on what's
Rico.
broken and let CI do its thing,
Kaso,
I'll fix one thing
backbone
and
ang
then we
gusto
know
niya.
if that worked.
The best part is that everyone stays on the same page. So So it's not like I keep rebasing for like half an hour.
Yeah, you got this
And it
unfortunate
feels like
pair
having
trapped in a
pushing
branch
stuff.
that just constantly keeps failing, and everybody else is like, we're fine, right?
Your branch.
It basically makes the whole team fair, right?
Yeah.
It makes you a more responsible developer.
Yes, that too.
Because if one pair is working on like a break all the tests kind of feature,
Yeah. Everything else.
probably everybody should care.
Yeah. And that just got them like going into, hey, I think you guys need some help because it's not.
Yeah, it
So
was.
wait, you're saying you don't do this stuff on a branch anymore? Or?
No.
No.
Do everything on release now.
We
Push and
break.
come to release.
Yeah. we want
We have a branch
broken.
called release, which is
Yeah,
basically
so
like
it's something like
staging to master.
Watch out, you got a
Not
badass
true
over here.
CI, you're not supposed to have any branches, but
Yeah.
but it's pretty damn close.
Right.
I still like to be able to do bug fixes without dealing with the other stuff on the release.
But again, like whenever you get like the instinct to just build it on the branch or cut something out, you have to force yourself back into that mindset where you have to be responsible for every commit.
And it all comes down to discipline, right? If
Yeah.
And there's different ways of doing it. The quickest way is like, oh yeah, I'll break everything and then fix it as they find ways to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be, you could take, half an hour more. But wait a minute, it would take you more than half an hour to fix all your issues. But it'll take half an hour more to code your thing, write it in such a way that it's more backward compatible, right?
Forces you to think backward compatibility.
Yep.
Especially like architectural changes.
And like, trying to mold a big feature, cutting it out into smaller, like deployable pieces, actually helps your design too. You tend to it's a physical block against coupling stuff too much. Because if you find yourself working on a particular piece on a class that will potentially break 4 or 5 more, you're probably doing something wrong before you even push.
Or the code was wrong to begin with.
Or the code was
it may need a bit of massage.
Yeah, it needs some loving. That's.
Well, the other thing is part of
Wala akong seminar.
being and just like deploying shit as fast as you can is feature flipping everything.
Di ba binabayar na ITTC?
So
That was one of the toughest
Last gig ko sa kanila.
and I'm not familiar with the term,
so feature flipping is just
other people probably are.
so feature flipping is think like Gmail Labs. It's just like
Switch to the new
X
version.
feature. You could try it out. You don't have to try it out. You could load it. You don't have to load it.
Oh, okay, so basically there's multiple versions of your thing in production, in a way.
It's live all at the
Let's
same
say
time, all
user
part of the same
chooses
code base.
designs.
Okay, so
But a
so
soft
you-
switch is able to switch between version A and B.
I see.
Version B might be the cool new version you think you're going to need.
The 16.
Okay, sorry. While it's hot, I'll do a quick break. If you have a green sticker, you were here before 7:15 at an event that started at 6:30. You get a burger and fries. If you don't have a green sticker, unfortunately you're late. I ordered, and I didn't know it's food. So make a friend. Maybe they'll give you a bite. Maybe you'll find your new
Or you can just
estate
throw
here.
dots at the door.
Yeah. If you got a green dot, help yourself. It's a quarter pounder and cheese and French fries to everyone with a dot. Everybody else, please help yourself to chocolate, popcorn, beer.
Green dots.
All right.
$1 only.
Dig in, guys.
I'm gonna dig it.